Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Wednesday, November 29th. I'm your host, Tom Moore. The game against Michigan is in 367 days. All right, we're having our buddy Ross Fulton on the show again today. And here's the deal. This is going to be, first of all, when we have Ross on the show, we have we're sponsored by Jeff Ruby's Steakhouse, proudly presenting nationally acclaimed U.S.D.A. prime steak, state food and sushi, impeccable service, live entertainment, and an attention to detail that is simply unmatched. You can learn more and make reservations today at jeffruby.com/Columbus. All right. So here's the deal. Ross is not at Jeff Ruby today. Ross is out right now, out in public, and so his audio is going to be a little off of what you have normally come to love and expect from him, but it has been quite a week already, and so we are going to try and just make this work. So Ross, coming to us from somewhere in middle America, as the Counting Crows once said, we're going to sort of address some of the big narratives around the game after the game, and sort of maybe play a little fact or fiction of, was this really a big deal or not? So Ross, let's start with the fourth down narrative. Ryan Day not going for it on 4th and 1 from his own 46 in the first half, not going for it, and really trying to get a closer kick or maybe go for a touchdown right before halftime. How big of an issue was that to you?
I thought it was an issue on both of them. I mean, particularly in hindsight, when you're in a very low possession game. On the one hand, I guess I'm empathetic that, Ohio State has been a defensive-led team this year. They were, as we talked about, number one in SP plus going into the game. So I'm sure in the back of Day's mind, he was thinking he didn't want to put his defense in a bad position, akin to what happened against Rutgers. But as it played out, that defense couldn't get off the field in the second half. And, Michigan is content to huddle and, snap the ball within 5 seconds every play. And so you're in particularly with the new clock rules, in a very low possession game. I think Michigan had like 60 plays and Ohio State had 56 or something like that. So, I think the first one, I had a couple problems with it. Even if you want to punt, I thought that spot was questionable at best. I thought it was something that needed to get reviewed. You can do a couple things. You can get up there. You can try to draw Michigan offsides, akin to what Michigan did on their final possession before kicking the field goal. And at the very least, if you don't get them to jump, you can, get in the ref's ears. You can try to get a measurement. You can challenge it yourself. Even if short of that, I mean, I personally think they should go. I don't like this trend of Ryan Day feeling like things are kind of getting more and more conservative as his tenure progresses at Ohio State. So I didn't like that decision. Similarly, like the one right before half, I thought that was a chance to grab momentum. Like at best, I mean, I don't know, he sees Jaden Fielding in practice. I don't know what, he had never kicked one like that in the game. He did make one which Moore called a timeout. But let's say, if you have a 40% chance to make that kick, I think you have about the same amount of chance to make the fourth down conversion. So I just think that was really a chance to steal a possession there. And, I just think people want to talk about like him calling plays, messing with his decision-making in those situations. But I don't know if I don't want to use that as an excuse necessarily. I think he just needs to have a plan. I personally would prefer him to be more aggressive uniformly in those situations. So that one I do think was an issue, and it certainly caught up with them because they just could, after the first interception, they could just never steal back in possession.
Yeah, that did feel like that first interception really kind of swung the game, and didn't swing the game permanently, but certainly swung the game in Michigan's favor to start with, and in a way that the first couple drives definitely had not. So let's talk a little bit about Kyle McCord, because he had his ups, obviously had the 2 interceptions. I went back and rewatched. I had not seen the game. I do not have a great view from the sideline. So when I went back and rewatched, there were kind of a little bit of an extenuating circumstance for both of those interceptions. On the first one, Marvin Harrison, kind of got beat to the spot and didn't really fight through it. And then on the second one, he did get hit right as he was releasing the ball. What were your thoughts on Kyle McCord's overall performance on the day? And then, we'll talk about those two interceptions in more detail on the show a little later on in the week. But just on those two interceptions, kind of broadly as well.
Yeah, I think those are plays, as you said. Like, I think they're well worth breaking down because they're a good example of some of the things Michigan was doing on defense and how Ohio State did kind of crack the code. But again, it's. I don't think either of them I would really blame fully on McCord. Like the first one was an RPO. We'll talk about it. Like they had a unique double team. He made the right read to pull and throw the RPO. It just kind of a play that was just a dead play. He had to figure out a way to nerf it in the ground. Second one, was an unfortunate situation. Donovan Jackson got his foot stepped on a twist, and he, got hit when he was throwing. But I think kind of McCord is like, again, it's sort of like Schrodinger's cat, right? Like there's things that people are anti-McCord. There's things that they can point to as examples. If people are pro McCord, there's things they can point to. And like it was yet another game where after the first quarter, particularly like after the interception, like he got better. Like I think in the second half, he played probably some of his best football of the season, particularly given everything that Michigan was throwing at him. So I think he was by the end playing well enough to win. It's just again like in a low possession game, they got themselves behind the eight ball, and that was enough. So there's Bo, my son Bo agrees.
Special guest appearance. Does he have a sponsor? I don't think we've gotten his appearances sponsored yet. We'll work on that maybe next. So let's talk a little bit about the Ohio State defense and Ohio State defensive coordinator Jim Knowles, because he is another person who there was sort of a growing narrative throughout the year that, boy, Jim Knowles has really gotten it all figured out. The defense has really got it all figured out. And then, they had the drive at the end of the game and they didn't get off the field at all without giving up points. Knowles talked about stop rate being his favorite stat, and their stop rate was 0 in the second half because they didn't get off the field without giving up points at any point in the second half. But they also held Michigan to 30 points, and that was with that one interception basically handing Michigan a touchdown to start the game. So, and you would think 23 points against one of the top offenses in the nation, that's pretty good. So, overall, like how do you grade out Jim Knowles and the defense's performance throughout the course of the game?
Yeah, I have to say I was probably pretty disappointed in it, maybe more so than the offense. And like you can look at the point total, but again, it was like a very low possession game. So like what was Michigan's point per possession? I mean, they didn't punt in the second half, and just overall, it just felt like some of like we talked about like how they continued to diversify the scheme throughout the year, and it was like kind of just disappeared, and it was just very overall pretty vanilla and pretty safe, but like safe in a way that was like easy to exploit. Like, hey, we're gonna be able. Michigan knows that we're gonna be able to attack the weak hook curl zone with throws, and we're gonna be able to make it such that like we put a corner and run support in certain situations, and like there just weren't a lot of like the adjustments, and like particularly like when you and again we can get into this with like specific plays to show, but like compared to all the things that Michigan was doing on defense, it's kind of night and day, and like it's not like yes, Knowles is running a lot more split safety like cover four and cover half stuff, quarter half, and maybe Latham Ranson's absence made him be very safe and not trusting things as much in the back end. But I just don't. You're still not seeing like what some of the things he did at Oklahoma State, and like after 2 years, it just is sort of that was a little concerning. So yes, like they didn't give up big plays, they didn't give up a ton of points. Ohio State had a chance to win. Like you certainly like if you're going to go through like what were the game changing things, like definitely the first interception is far bigger than anything that happened on defense. But like you basically needed the defense to be in a position to like steal a possession back, or like special teams steal a possession back, and like instead you had like Michigan's punting was much better, their field goal kicking was much better. Like defensively, they created more havoc plays, like especially like that last drive. Like at some point, like you got to go back to what you did last year and like throw it out, and like if Michigan breaks one, that's. But you got to like there's things you can do without being like cover zero, bringing the house to like try to stop the run game. We've talked about like fire zones and sim pressures, like bringing pressure from one side while being conservative on the other side, or playing a zone behind it. So Like, yes, Michigan didn't make the mistakes. Like, Michigan got some breaks. Like, J.J. McCarthy throwing it across his body, like, sometimes it's like not your day against a really good team. And Ohio State won. Like, when you look at, like, did we get that beat that badly? Like, Parker Fleming's, like, advanced stats rate. Like, Ohio State was better than Michigan, and this is the second year. Like, on a down-for-down basis, Ohio State outperformed them. But, like, they had mistakes between the interception and the fourth down decisions. And so none of that's on Knowles. And so maybe if those things don't happen, like, the defensive philosophy is sufficient. But, like, it's really just like when you get down to it, then, like, you're in the game you're in and you need to get the ball back and you can't allow a 7-minute drive. And so you got to do something. You got to take some chances or come up with something to throw Michigan off schedule. So I think, there's a little bit of blame to go around everyone.
All right. And by the way, when Ross says Parker Fleming, he is not talking about the Ohio State special teams coach. He is talking about at StatsOWar on Twitter. He is one of those sort of advanced stats guys who has a lot of really interesting, insightful stuff to talk about with games. And he talks about net success rate, and that's the stat that Ross is citing there. So we will have Ross in a more sonically excellent place next time. Probably not as much diverse sound coming in through your speakers, but we will glad we could get Ross on here just to chat through some of this stuff before the game was too far in the rearview mirror, because there's it's always interesting to everyone has their very strong thoughts as soon as the game's over, and everything is a final unquestionable narrative around someone or something or a program. And then you get a little separation. And it's like, well, there's probably a little more gray there and not all black and white. So I wanted to get Ross in to talk about that. And we will get Ross back to really break down some of the individual plays on both offense and defense a little later on in the week when he is back home and in a better spot to have a more in-depth conversation on all that kind of stuff. And when he is back, he will be sponsored once again by Jeff Ruby Steakhouse, the award-winning upscale steakhouse in downtown Columbus, named one of the top 50 steakhouses in America by Food Network. Go to jeffruby.com/Columbus to make reservations. Check out the menu today. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.